want to do this particular like documentary? I mean, there are many things you could do, but you chose this subject. Can you tell me why?
Well, we're obsessed with these worlds that haven't changed in many ways. You know, worlds that aren't taken over by technology and globalization, and they're hard to find. I mean, we all know we're all from cities. You know, we all know how hard it is to find these places. And we, by coincidence, Gregory and I happened to stumble upon this same area, the same region in northern Italy on our personal travels, and we noticed that there was something different about this place. It wasn't like other places. I mean, this place, seemed to not be like the rest of the modern world. You know, there weren't people on iPhones and Instagram all day, and they weren't on laptops and Starbucks. These people were really, it was a village, a sleepy village, with people reading the paper and gossiping about it. And there was one cafe, one street, and there was a rhythm to this place that was really appealing to us. And then we found out that there was a secret society of truffle hunters, of these men that lived up in they'd point up in the mountains behind the town. They'd say, no one knows who they are. No, we don't ask questions about who they are. We don't, but and people would make up stories about them because they didn't know who they were. They'd say, oh, that some of them are crazy, or they live in these holes or caves or, cabins, but they have an ability to find something that nobody else can find, which is this white truffle that cannot be cultivated. It's the most expensive food ingredient in the world, and only a handful of people know how to find it. And that drew us to this place to learn more, because like our last film, The Last Race, was about a racetrack on Long Island. It's a community also that's kept its traditions alive, for generations. It's the oldest racetrack in the country, in this town. And Italy has also been keeping this tradition of truffle hunting alive for 6 or 7 generations. So that drew us to learn more about this mysterious culture.
So when you guys stumbled upon this town, what was the first thing in your mind, how you would even approach the subject? I mean, I love the way it was shot. It was sort of like you got engaged with them. You were right there. It wasn't like the normal documentary format. Yeah. So can you share with me what made you decide to, go in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, it took us a long time to figure out what the film was going to be about, what the stories were. But what we were both struck with the moment we entered into this world was that it felt like a fairy tale. That the world, it felt like we were traveling back in time. It felt like we were going into, dropped into Italy in the 1960s in a lot of ways with these truffle hunters. They lived these beautiful pre-digital lives, and they had this relationship with the land, and they had this relationship to the community, and they had this, almost, this ability to kind of perform magic by figuring out how to get these truffles out of the ground that are as rare as gold, and only they had the ability to do it. So the process of filmmaking, it started with just this question that we talked about a lot, which was, how do we take this feeling that we both felt, that we were both kind of enchanted by, and how do we translate that into cinema? How do we use the cinematic form to bring the audience into this feeling? And it took a lot of time for us to figure out how to do that. And we experimented with different ways of shooting, but we had eventually kind of landed on this idea of the film. We want the film to feel like a storybook, and we want each frame in the film to feel like you're kind of flipping into a new page in the storybook and being transported into a new world. And we wanted the shots not just to convey information, but we talked about this idea of a subjective truth. What does it feel like to be there? We wanted you to hear it. We wanted you to see it, but hopefully we can use cinema so you can almost even smell the world. That was our joke. So you can smell what a truffle, actually, the scent of a truffle. We wanted to transmit that through cinema. And so that was kind of our goal. And then through the process of filming, the stories emerged for the different characters in the film. And not just, we spent a lot of time in their lives, and we got to see kind of what was happening below the surface of their lives, the conflicts that they were confronting on a day-to-day basis, the big decisions that they were making. And that formed the narrative of the story. But we didn't know any of that going in. It was just this desire to translate this feeling.
Yeah, it reminded me so much of growing up in the Caribbean, because that's sort of
Mm.
like how we were. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm like being put back home again, because it was so
Oh, that's
organic,
amazing.
and the characters reminded me of people back home and how everything was. And I love Carlo's wife, you know, every minute, Carlo, where are you? Get in here. I don't want you to be out there
She's
anymore. I
tough.
mean, I was just like, why doesn't
She's
he listen
tough.
to his wife? You know, it was great.
She's-
So I just love
yeah.
that you brought so many subjects in, you know, class and capitalism and
Yeah.
climate change, and it was just brilliant. What would you hope that, you know, somebody would take away, if anything at all? What would that be for each one of you?
Well, I think because of this, where we still are in this pandemic, we realize how disconnected we are, not just socially but culturally. We're disconnected. Our communities have been broken apart, and families have been broken apart. And so I think when you see this community that's so vibrant and so simple in many ways, these people you see they're not driving fancy cars and living in these big houses. These are the houses that have been in their families for generations and generations. They grow their own food. So you question, well, maybe we should be thinking about where our food supply comes from. Where they're self-sufficient in many ways. They communicate differently. They're not slaves to technology in many ways. They don't. They have very rich lives. You look at them, and like we would always be chasing after these kids. Just couldn't you could keep them up with them. And Carlo, they're very young. They're young. They're 85-year-old people that seem like they're 25 in many ways. And I think because they have a joy in their life, because of how they've chosen to live, they're always in the fields during the day, in the farm, working the land with their hands. They know trees intimately. They know nature. We'd say, well, we can't go. They say, why don't you come back tomorrow to film us, because today we're busy. We say, no, tomorrow the forecast said it's going to rain. They'd be like, no, it's not going to rain. They'd be like, it's not going to rain. They know the weather better than anybody does. They know so much. And I think if you want those questions raised, like you were saying, of course, about class, about capitalism, what is it? What's the value of cultural preservation? Because once technology kind of seeps into your community, you really can't get rid of it, and it changes things. And this community has that, as it has this magic to it, that we're hoping stays around for generations. We fell in love with this place, and we started a conservation fund, because this is not an impact film by any means, but we ended up saying, well, how can we help to preserve this culture? And we started to see deforestation come in, because they were cutting wood down for firewood, 200-year-old oak trees for firewood, and to plant beautiful grapevines and stuff, because of climate change. Now the land is warmer. Now you can plant grapes everywhere in the mountains. So we raised enough money to really purchase the land where we made the film. So you can't deforest, and we keep the community alive, and hope to inspire younger people to really come back to the land. Put down your phones, and keep the traditions alive that's been going on for 6 or 7
Yes,
generations.
I'm all for that. I want to go visit.
You should come when we go November.
How did you even get them to agree to be in this film? I mean, there seem to be so, as you said, having their own space and their own moment and the way they move in the land. How do you convince them that you would want to do this? And they said yes.
It was really just, it was time. We spent so much time before we even brought out the camera with the Truffle Hunters that we wanted to film with. And we really, before the process of filming began, it was just we wanted to build friendships with them. We shared meals with them. We talked to them about why we were making this film, why we thought their lives were important, why we thought it was important to share the wisdom that we saw in their world with the rest of the world right now. And we had a lot of fun with them too. I mean, it was a really, I mean, we when you're with these people, they're just kind of bubbling with joy. Their lives are just filled with happiness, and Aurelio, just like in the film, we would be walking down the street with him, and he just starts singing, and we'd go to a restaurant with him, and there'd be a crowd of people around him. So, that joy was infectious. It just kind of filled the production, and we had a lot of fun with them. And I think we hope they had a lot of fun with us. We think they did. And so, the process of filming, it felt like a celebration to us. Every day that we were with them felt like a celebration with us. And that's what we want the audience to feel when they watch this film. we want them to experience this celebration of life, because that's really ultimately what it is. It's a celebration of the potential of a human life to live joyously.
And I like the fact that you made it, being grounded to the earth is so important. And I think this film, and like you said, Gregory was shot, it was so magical, and the shots and the trees and the relationship with the dog. I mean, I tell you, I can go on and on with you for hours, and I know you have to go. So what would be the one thing that each one of you, I mean, obviously you've done many things in different kinds of films. What did you take away for yourself that you learned on a personal note, if anything, doing this particular project?
Well, I think it's similar to what I said before. I think it's, you have to start questioning a lot of things, the way that things that we get used to, like technology's brought us some really great things. It's great. There's a lot of progress and also, but then at the same time, technology has robbed us of certain things, and it happens quickly. You don't realize it. Like, you don't realize all of a sudden you don't go to the market anymore because Amazon is going to deliver to you in like 2 hours an onion. So you think that's convenient, but then you've lost the connection between the person, the market, and yourself. You've lost a sense of community. And I think that is the biggest thing that well, for me, I question personally, is the sense of community that's just disappearing so quickly around the world because of technology. People just don't communicate anymore. They don't talk. They don't exchange information the way information should be exchanged. So I think that's what we try doing in all of our work. The last project we did was about a racetrack. The same thing is, you watch people work with their hands, right? They're not farmers, but they're mechanics. They go to the junkyard, get a car, they piece it together for like $300. And then on a racetrack, and someone who considers himself just a welder or just a plumber, on the weekend, Saturday night under the lights, they announce his name, wins a trophy, signs autographs in the pits. His life has a meaning to him. And I think it's the same with these truffle hunters.
I mean, I think, it's what Mike's talking about. The way that kind of modernity has changed the way we live it. It's happening very quickly, but it's also happening slowly and gradually in a way that we don't realize the things that we're letting go of as we're kind of pulled into the future. And some of those things, yeah, we wanna let go, but there are things that we're losing that that might be important. And when you spend time in places that have them, you realize they might be essential. Like our relationship to nature, it might just be more than something that makes us happy when we go out into the forest, but there might be something about that connection to the natural world that might actually be essential to being human. And the same thing with just a physical community. I mean, we can live in this digital world that we're moving into, which we've been forced into really rapidly from the pandemic, and we can have digital relationships, and we can talk to each other on Zoom, it's amazing what technology has done. But what is there something about physical interaction, being in the room with people, that isn't just, it's not just nice, but maybe there's something about that that's actually essential to being a human, that we actually need that.
I agree. I love what you're saying. I feel that way. I feel that we need that physical connection. We need to see people's energy. We need to look in their eyes. We need to have the tactical touch. We need to be around. So again, I just really applaud a film like this. And I think it's so important that conversations like this happen with everyone watching the film. And I believe each person can take away something from the film. Maybe not what they thought they would take away, but it would be something. Well, you guys, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Wonderful film, and have a great weekend. Thanks a lot.